Welcome back to Andersen Acres for another episode of Farm Fights. Today we're going to dig into a real hot button issue that the hobby farming world tends to argue about a lot. Go onto Facebook, find a chicken group, and tell everyone you want to free range your chickens. You will stoke up the crazies very, very quickly. Okay? Should you free range your chickens or should you keep them confined? There are strong opinions on both sides of this argument. Okay? Strong opinions. Some say free ranging is the only natural and humane way to raise birds and will not tolerate people locking them up for any reason. Others say it's reckless and cruel because of predator risk. So who's right? Well, today I'm not really picking a side, even though that's my job. Even though, as you can see, we free range most of our birds. I'm not picking a side, though. We're going to talk about this from every angle. I'm just moving out of the way so you can see my beautiful Jabba. But we're going to talk about this from every angle. The good, the bad, and the feathery. He's a feathery boy. And whether you're new to chickens or a seasoned chicken wrangler, this is for you. All right? Especially if you've ever gotten into one of these arguments on Facebook. So first, let's define what we mean by free ranging. True free ranging means your chickens are allowed to roam your property or at least a large area freely during the day. Obviously, these guys are going wherever they darn well please. And if I were to turn my camera this way, we got a duck, and that's Sauron. So we clearly, and that's a turkey. So we clearly have, and that's a collapsed greenhouse that we haven't fixed yet. So we clearly have birds free ranging all around us. When your birds are free ranging, they are foraging for bugs, seeds, grass, and they explore the world like they would if they were wild birds, except you toss them food now and then. At night, typically, either you bring them into a secure coop for roosting or they take themselves to bed in their secure coop. Like our guys take themselves to bed at the end of the day. We don't have to put anyone away. What? Sorry, there's a turkey making noise behind me. But we don't have to put anyone away at the end of the day. They take themselves off to bed. But a lot of people like to go out and they like to make sure that everyone is put away at night. So there are also semi-free ranging models where they're kind of free ranging, but not really, where birds are let out for only part of the day or in shifts or into large fenced pasture areas with mobile coops. We'll talk about all that too, because each variation is just a little bit different and has different considerations. So, what are the pros of free ranging? Well, a lot of people love to free range. We're among them. We love free ranging. And there are a lot of good things about it. One is better nutrition. And then there's roosters getting into it. So, better nutrition. Birds get natural sources of protein from bugs and from greens, and this can help improve your egg quality. It can improve how much they're laying. And you'll often notice darker yolks, richer flavor, and even more nutritious eggs from birds that do free range. You'll also have lower feed costs because birds are going to supplement their own diet, especially in the warmer months. That means you buy less feed and there are fewer bugs in your yard because the birds are eating them. The chickens are out there eating them all day. And if you have other birds, they'll even eat different types of bugs. So bug control, less feed cost. That's a plus. They'll also be able to mimic natural behavior. So dust bathing, scratching, pecking, it keeps them entertained, reduces boredom and pecking order aggression. It also gives them a lot more space than a run is capable of giving you because they can roam anywhere they like on the property. Okay, we have acres and acres for them to roam. They don't have to all just sit together and be annoying. Okay, there's chicken right there. That's lonesome. But they can go where they like, when they like. They don't have an overcrowding problem because if two roosters are having a problem with each other, they can just separate from each other, right? One can go over there by the rabbits, and the other one can hit the compost pile. They do not have to all be together all the time. So it also reduces aggression. And again, pest control. They'll eat ticks, flies, mosquitoes, larvae, so you have less bugs hatching. If you have goats or horses, this is a big plus. They'll pick through the droppings of other animals for things they can still consume. So that helps break down the droppings of your horses and stuff really efficiently because the chickens are always scratching through it. It's just a good thing. And mental and physical health plays into it. Movement keeps birds fit, and freedom reduces stress. And let's be honest, watching chickens free range is just so satisfying. I love it. That's why I sit out here and work so much of the time, because they're happier, more curious, and frankly hilarious. So sitting out here as I do my job, it's just good fun. However, sometimes this is not ideal, not for everyone. So there's a reason this is a farm fight and not a love letter. Free ranging also has some very real, very serious risks that you need to consider before you let your birds out to play. First is predators. This is absolutely the biggest issue. Hawks, eagles, foxes, raccoons, coyotes, even neighborhood dogs. In fact, neighbor dogs or even your own dog are the single greatest risk to domestic chickens. They are a bigger risk than coyotes, than wolves, than foxes. If your birds are going to get chomped, hi, yeah, that's duck. Duck going that way. So if your birds are going to get chomped, it's primarily going to be from neighborhood dogs or even your own. These are a big danger. And it can happen at any time. Okay? And I really do mean that. It can happen in the middle of the day when it's bright and sunny out. It can happen middle of the night under the cover of darkness. It can happen when you're sitting on your back porch. It can happen the moment you go inside for a bathroom break. Okay? It can happen whether you are home or not. It can happen whether you are ready for predators or not. Okay? Predators are a very real risk. All right? We've had close calls there. That's why we have the livestock guardian dogs. Okay, that's why we have them. Because on occasion, before them, we did lose birds to predators because we free range. So absolutely, it's a problem. Don't let anyone who free ranges tell you there will never be a predator and there will never be a problem and it's fine and you don't have to have dogs and you don't have to worry about it. Because that's not true. Okay, at some point, especially if you don't have dogs. And yeah, could you sit out on your porch ready? I'm going to avoid certain words because sometimes that gets you in trouble. But could you sit out on your back porch ready? Sure. Can you do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Because predators are smart. Predators will figure out that you're sitting there waiting for them to show up. Okay? They're smart. They will know. And they'll figure it out and they'll just wait until you go inside to take a nap. You cannot be there all of the time. That's why we have dogs. But you have to know that you're running a very real risk when you're free ranging. And we love free ranging. I'm a huge advocate for it. But you need to know that you are running a very real risk when you let your birds out. Okay? It is 100% a risk. Also, when they're free ranging, it's harder to monitor their health. That doesn't sound like it would be, but it is. You might miss signs of illness or injury if birds are scattered across the property. Okay, you might not see if your duck is limping, if your ducks hang out on the pond all day. And so you don't really see them. A lot of ducks will float on the pond all night. So you might not see that your duck has a leg injury. You also might not be able to find the eggs. Free ranging birds tend to find secret places to lay eggs. Okay? And we have found eggs. There's a burn barrel turned on its side, an old one from the previous owners. We found eggs in there, which is an easy spot. We've also found them in various locations in the bush. And if you're not on top of it, yeah, egg collection can be an issue. So you're going to have to be on top of that. Egg hunts are not always that much fun. It's not always Easter. And sometimes you're literally just scouring the property and hoping to heck you find some eggs because you haven't found any in a week. There's also the potential destruction of your gardens and your landscaping. This is an issue. Chickens are tiny little dinosaurs. They will eat your flowers and your lettuce, and they'll scatter your mulch, and they will go after your corn, and they will tear up your tomato plants. This is just what they do. Rooster's having a scuffle. There's also the risk of parasites or toxins. We like to think there isn't, but there is. Foraging in areas with wild bird droppings or compost can expose them to worms, coccidia, poisons, bird flu. All of these things could be found by them free-ranging. We are well aware we are taking this risk as our guys wander about. Also, they're harder to catch. Do you need to treat a sick hen? Do you need to isolate someone? Are you putting together a breeding coop so you have to catch your favorite hens? It's fun. It can be fun. Okay, good luck chasing her down while she's got a whole pasture to hide in or she's out in the woods. Okay, your best luck is at night, but it's still difficult. So be aware. They are going to be very difficult to catch if they are free ranging. That's not a big issue for us. Our birds are pretty friendly, but it definitely could be an issue. So, what about the pros of confinement? Well, why do some people choose not to free range? It's not because they're mean, it's because it works best for them. First of all, there's the safety issue. Birds enclosed in runs are far less likely to become predator snacks. And I say less likely because we live in bear country. You're not going to build a run that will stop a determined bear. A determined bear can get in your house if they need to, okay? So the best built run will still occasionally be vulnerable to predator attacks. You can do everything the way everyone tells you should, and you might still end up losing a couple to predators. But it is less likely if they are confined in a run, especially if you have a neighbor that free ranges. It sounds mercenary, but if you have a neighbor that free ranges and you confine your birds, probably the predators are going to go pick off the neighbor's birds. I know it sounds predatory, but that's what they're predators. They're predators. They are predatory. Also, when your birds are confined, it allows you to control their diet. You know exactly what they're eating, and you can monitor for any potential deficiencies. Cleanliness. Well, you can rotate runs, mulch your runs, keep your property neater overall if you can keep the birds in one spot. Because I'll tell you that sometimes these birds make a mess. Okay, they do. They poop everywhere and they knock things over, and they go into the shed, and you can always tell when the chickens have been in the shed because everything is everywhere. And it's not neat and tidy. It's easier to keep things neater and tidier if your animals are contained in runs or pens. So there's that issue. Also, there's the egg collection issue. It's so much easier to find, even if your hens are deciding not to lay in their nest box. If you know they're confined to a run, it is so much easier to find the eggs, even if they're not in the nest box, at least they're in the run, right? Close enough. We're just going to rotate this because the birds are gone this way now. So we're just going to watch the birds. They're beautiful birds. We'll rotate back if they move. So also there will be less damage to your property and your gardens, okay? Your tomatoes will not get torn up if your birds are confined away from your plants. Your porch will not end up with poop all over it if your birds can't hang out on the porch all day, okay? So there's definitely that particular consideration. Also, easier flock management. It's faster to check everyone for signs of illness or disease or parasites if you can catch everyone in short order. Everyone's leaving. Yeah, because now they're right in front of me. Oh well, we'll turn back. Hello again. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. The birds like to be loud. Now, there's nothing wrong with confining your birds if you're giving them enough space, and it is a perfectly viable alternative, and for some people, the only way to do things. Maybe they can't have livestock guardian dogs. Maybe livestock guardian dogs just don't work for them. Maybe they're just not home enough to deter predators. But for whatever reason, you might find that you are just not able to free range. And that's fine. Maybe you live in an area where free ranging is not allowed. That happens. What are the downsides of confinement? Because it would be remiss of me not to mention that there are some downsides to locking your birds up all day. First of all, behavioral issues. Your birds will get less stimulation. Even if you provide all the enrichment, it is automatically less stimulating to be locked up all day. So chickens can become bored and aggressive. Feather picking and pecking order drama escalate. Okay? A lot. Okay? It gets out of control. And you're going to have to be on top of that. You're going to have to keep your numbers down. You're going to have to make sure there's enough space for everyone. You're going to have to watch your hen-to-roo ratio. Our hen-to-roo ratio is out of whack. But we're okay because they can just run around the property all day. They don't have to hang out together. Feed costs is another thing. Because they're in a run, and even if your run starts out as grass, it will very shortly be no grass. It will be no grass. No grass at all. And because of that, you're going to have to provide all the food. Okay? 24/7, summer, winter, doesn't matter. You're going to have to provide all of their nutrition. That will automatically cost you more. Okay? Because bags won't last as long. Also, there's sanitation. Poop builds up fast. You'll need to deep clean more often, especially in winter, because they're pooping in the same spot every single day. Okay? Literally every single day. So because of that, it's going to be dirtier, more cleanup. Because ours spend most of the day roaming the woods, we have very little cleanup. Yes, after a long winter, the barn looks less than ideal, even though we spot clean on almost a daily basis. But even in the winter, they're outside so much, it's less of an issue. When they're out inside all the time, even if they're in their run, you're going to have to clean that run, and it's going to not be that pleasant. But if the alternative is a fox eats all your hens, yeah, it's a trade-off. Also, birds confined do get less exercise, without a doubt. Confinement can lead to overweight birds, especially in breeds not bred for confinement. Okay? Some birds do better in confinement than others, so if you are going to confine your birds, you might want to pick a breed that does better with confinement. They do exist. You can fix a lot of these things with proper run design, like dust baths and perches and scratch piles, cabbage heads strung on strings, and that kind of stuff. But it takes more intentional effort. I don't have to do anything to entertain our birds. They go into the woods and entertain themselves all day. I have a duck staring at me because I'm talking. What? I'm allowed to talk. She's just staring at me. So, what about the middle ground we talked about before? Kind of sort of free ranging, but not free ranging? Well, that's usually managed free ranging. A lot of people on hobby farms, they find that this solution is somewhere between free ranging and confinement. So there are a few options to consider when you're managing your free range time. You might want to do supervised free ranging only when you're home and outside. So maybe let them out when you are tending your garden. Maybe let them out when you're having a barbecue. Let them out when you are there and outside, and you can keep an eye on things, and then put them away when you're going back in. That works for a lot of people. You might want to invest in portable chicken tractors. These are movable pens that give fresh forage and allow them to move around to the property because you can move the tractors, and they can do that in relative safety. So that's another option, especially if you want the birds to be able to eat the grass and eat the bugs and stuff, but you don't want to let them out. You can just use a tractor. There are some great designs out there. You can build your own. You can buy them these days. Buying them is fairly expensive. Building them yourself requires a little bit of skill, but it's not too bad cost-wise. You can do rotational grazing areas, which are areas in your property that you fence for a week or 10 days or whatever, and then you just move these fenced zones. Usually you put those fenced zones in areas you will be frequenting, so the birds are not completely unsupervised all the time. You might not be out all the time, but if you pen them off near your cattle pasture and you know you're going to be in the cattle pasture all week, that's a good place to pen them off for the week because you'll be there a lot, especially if that penned off fencing is electrified. It can help deter predators. You might decide that you're only going to let them free range in areas where you can put up aerial netting or tree cover to deter hawks. if that is one of your biggest predators. In a lot of areas, hawks, eagles, falcons are the biggest predator. So you might decide aerial netting, and then your birds are safe enough. So you'll let them free range in areas where you have aerial netting. You might invest in guardian animals like the Great Pyrenees that we have, or other livestock guardian breeds. They can be really helpful in deterring predators. Guardian animals can guard chickens. Even if they don't bond to the chickens, they can still keep predators away. So our dogs are pretty bonded to the birds, and they will absolutely keep predators away. That's why we still have our chickens, despite living in an area where coyotes and foxes and eagles abound, and bears. We have them because we have the dogs. We still have all our birds because we have the dogs, and the dogs are excellent at their job. So if livestock guardians work for you, I would definitely recommend them. We will do another Farm Fights episode on the different things you can use for livestock guardians, because there are some people who maintain that you can use geese as livestock guardians. No, you cannot. But we'll deal with that in another episode. For now, just know that livestock guardians are a viable option for kind of bridging that gap between free ranging completely with no supervision and locking them up. You can free range under the supervision of livestock guardians. You could also decide to only let them out when predators are not around. So if you know the predators in your area, you might be able to know that you're not really going to get a lot of predators right after lunch, so you're going to let them free range for a few hours then. The downside here is the predators might eventually figure that out. They might eventually figure, look, he's not going to let them out when it's afternoon and, it's dinner time and night is approaching, so he's not going to let them out early in the morning either. But if I go just after lunch, they'll be out. And predators are not stupid. They eventually figure these things out, even if you think they're not going to. So there's definitely that to consider. So what we do is we free range all of the time, but our livestock guardians are here. Okay, in fact, Vod could just walk past. He's going down the path to patrol. He's gonna, hi, there's chicken looking at me now. But Vodka just walked down the path so that he can go patrol the property to make sure, because evening's approaching, he wants to make sure there's no foxes or coyotes that are going to come and eat these guys, because they're literally all over the lawn right now. They're all over the place. And he just wants to make sure they're safe. So we use livestock guardian dogs to protect our flock instead of just randomly free ranging. And our birds are out all the time. Our dogs are here all the time. Okay? They are really efficient at their job. So would I recommend free ranging with no precautions at all? No. Everyone has predators. You might think you don't. Let your chickens out for a couple weeks and the predators will find you. Even if you think you don't have them. So you have to take some kind of precaution. And that means considering your setup. Okay? You want to realize, first of all, that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for other people. So what works for me won't necessarily work for you. You're going to have to ask yourself some questions. First of all, ask yourself, do I have predator issues? Do I think I don't? Because everyone does. It might just be raccoons, but raccoons can be devastating. So really think about what predators you might actually have. Okay? Think about what predators might be an issue. And as you think about that, consider what kind of predators, when they're active, what you can do to deter them. Do you have safe fencing or cover for your birds? Do you have somewhere for them to run if something happens? I mean, you can't just leave them out on your lawn all day with no coop and no sheltered area, no shed, no garage. They have to have somewhere to go. So think about where they might take shelter. Consider if you're home at all during the day. Is somebody home if something happens? How many birds do you have and what breeds are they? Some breeds free range better than others. So if you have birds that are really, really, really slow, they're going to get picked off by predators faster. So definitely consider what breeds you have and how many birds you have. And then think about if you have kids or pets or neighbors who might interfere in your ability to free range. So Are your kids going to be running through the chickens, scaring them all day? Because that's not good for the chickens. Do you have a dog, or your neighbors have a dog that's going to come and tear up your birds all the time? And yes, sometimes it's your own dog. Let's be honest. Sometimes it is your own dog. Sometimes it's the lab you got because you love labs, but you forgot they're a bird dog. So this is what happens sometimes. Okay? So definitely think about that. And also consider if you are okay losing a few birds every year, because even with all the precautions, if you free range, you probably are going to lose one or two. Okay. I think this year we lost one of our male ducks because we have two, and I haven't been able to find Dewey. So it's possible that I'm just blind as a bat, because I seriously thought Sauron was dead, one of our black roosters. And it turns out I'm just an idiot. So it could just be that I'm completely blind, but it's definitely something to consider, right? Consider if you are willing to lose a handful of birds here and there, because it may happen. Free ranging is a risk versus reward calculation. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what you can manage with the time and resources you have. So it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach. Sometimes, a lot of times, you have to do what works for you, not what somebody else on Facebook told you to do. So that is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you free range your chickens, or do you keep them in a secured run? What's worked or not worked for your flock? I love hearing from fellow farmers and backyard chicken keepers. Your experience could help someone else decide what's right for them and what solutions they might be able to come up with. Thanks for watching Farm Fights. We'll see you tomorrow.